All right, I first wanted to thank you guys for just your interest in our study, blood testing for identification of personalized weight management. This is a joint project between the Department of Computer and Electrical Engineering and the Department of Health, Nutrition, and Exercise Sciences. I am Nathaniel Johnson. I'm a doctoral student and a graduate research assistant. I will also be doing the scheduling for this project, so if you decide to participate, you'll be hearing a lot of my voice. This is a brief overview of our research team. I'd like to just point out a few names for you. So one is Dr. Nawaratna. He is the creator of the sensor that we'll be evaluating in this project. He's also an assistant professor in electrical and computer engineering. Next, I'd like to point out Dr. Sherry Stastny. She's a professor in health, nutrition, and exercise sciences, and she's also our team's dietitian. So when you meet with a dietitian, you'll meet with her. And then, of course, there's me. I'm Nathaniel Johnson, as I already said, and I'll be doing the scheduling for this project. Here's a little photo of our research team. Pretty good looking group, I would say so myself. Anyway, let's cut to the chase. Why is this research important? Well, according to most recent data, 39.8% of the US population is obese. I think we all understand that in general, as Americans, we're overweight, but this 40% number to me is a little astounding. And we also know that the ability to lose weight through diet and exercise is very individual and varies by person to person. So across 79 different studies that looked at weight loss across 18 months, the average amount of weight loss was 1.1 to 20.5 pounds. Right here, we have a little diagram that we borrowed from another group of researchers, and it illustrates just how complex even just weight maintenance is, not even weight loss. There's a lot of factors that go into this, and at the moment, we're still not sure what is predictive of who will be able to lose weight through diet and exercise and who will not be able to lose weight through diet and exercise. And that is where our research comes in hand. We're concerned with how do we predict who will lose weight through diet and exercise and who won't. Now, Dr. Nawaratna and his team have invented a pretty cool sensor that's able to detect a certain blood marker that may be able to predict who will lose weight and who won't. The goal of this trial is to determine if that sensor works correctly. Okay, because our goal is to evaluate the function of this tool, the eligibility requirements for our study are pretty open. We're looking for both men and women aged 18 to 60 with body mass indexes or BMIs between 25 to 34.9. So to get your BMI, you can take your weight in pounds divided by your height in inches squared and then times that number by 703. Or you can click on this handy online BMI calculator. It'll take you to the National Institute of Health's website where you can enter your height and your weight and it will automatically calculate your BMI for you. And of course, you also must be able to perform physical activity and exercise because part of this weight loss intervention involves aerobic exercise. All right, let's talk for a second about who wouldn't be eligible for this study. You cannot be pregnant and participate in this study. You cannot use any nicotine product, including vaporizers, cigarettes, or chewing tobacco. You cannot have neuromuscular disease, diabetes, uncontrolled blood pressure, or being currently treated for cancer. You cannot have had a previous heart attack or heart-related condition. You cannot have difficulty moving without assistive devices, or in other words, if you use a walker or a cane or a wheelchair to get around, you will not be eligible for this study. Also, you cannot participate if you've had previous bariatric surgery, if you're taking medicines that influence muscle size, so testosterone and growth hormone come to mind, or if you weigh more than 350 pounds. Lastly, you cannot have a fear of blood or needles or of blood draws. All right, so what type of study is this? This is a non-randomized clinical trial. So the non-randomized part of the name means that everyone's doing the same thing. So usually in medical research or in clinical trials, you have what would be called a placebo group and a treatment group. In this study, we do not have those groups. We only have one group of people, so everybody will be doing the same thing. And then the clinical trial part of the name refers to the fact that there's a test of an intervention, which in this case will be diet and exercise, and its effects on a health outcome, which in this case will be body fat percentage or body composition. It's a 14-week clinical trial. There's 12 weeks of diet and exercising, and then there's 1 week flanking that 12-week period, so on either end of that 12-week period for pre and post testing. So that adds up to about 14 weeks. The intervention is a 500 calorie per day energy deficit. So the goal is to reduce calories from diet by about 250 per day, while increasing the amount of calories burned from aerobic exercise by 250 calories a day. All right, well, more specifically, the dietary intervention will entail free meetings with a registered dietitian. So that'll be Dr. Stastny. There'll be 7 meetings. So week 0, 2, 4, 6, 9, 11, and 13. In addition to this, what's probably the coolest part about this intervention is that you're going to sit down, the dietitian, and you're going to talk extensively, or at least fairly extensively, about your eating habits and your dietary behaviors, and you're going to work together to create an individualized way to decrease your intake by about 250 calories per day. The exercise intervention is somewhat similar to this. So you're going to exercise 4 to 5 days per week. You're going to do aerobic exercise or cardio, what people would say. The goal is to burn at least 250 calories during each of these sessions. And kind of similar to the dietary intervention, you can choose your own exercise modality. Just like when you meet with a dietitian, you'll work together to choose an individual dietary plan. You can choose your individual aerobic exercise. You can vary it between sessions. So you can use like the track, you can use an elliptical, you can use a rower. You're also going to be giving a little heart rate monitor and a training log, and that'll help us measure your intensity. And even more cool, you're going to get a free wellness center membership throughout this study, which will give you a place that you can go anytime to go exercise, do your aerobic activity. There's also a pool there, although you would not be able to, of course, use your heart rate monitor. This is a brief timeline of our study. Now, it's fairly complicated. I wanted to highlight a few things. The green bar running across the top, that represents our intervention period. So the time in which you'll be dieting and exercise. The yellow bars just beneath it, those are our testing periods. So there's 3 of them. There's that first and there's that last testing period. There's also one in the middle. Then in addition to that, in orange, we have different periods where you're either going to be, in orange, where you're going to be logging your physical activity and wearing a little physical activity tracker. And then in red, you'll be logging your diet and meeting with the dietitian. All right, let's talk about the testing sessions. So the first thing we're going to do in any of the testing session is get a resting heart rate and blood pressure. Both of these will be done manually or by hand. So we'll take your radial pulse with our 2 fingers and a stopwatch, and we'll also use a stethoscope and a sphygmometer to measure your blood pressure. Following resting heart rate and blood pressure, we'll do a height, weight, waist, and hip measurements. The fancy word for all these measurements is called anthropometrics, which just means measuring people. So we'll have you just stand up on a stadiometer to measure your height, get on a scale for weight, and then we'll use a tape measure, kind of the way a tailor does to measure your height, and your waist and hip circumferences. Following those measures, we'll actually do the blood draw. So the first thing we're looking for in blood draw are these things called microRNAs, or microribonucleic acids. These are the actual blood markers that may indicate if you're able to lose weight through diet and exercise or perhaps not. So this is what we're interested in, primarily. In addition to that, from the blood draw, we're also going to look at your blood lipids. So things like triglycerides, high density lipoprotein, or HDL, for example. The blood draw will be performed by a registered nurse or phlebotomist, and the blood draw will be performed in the antecubital vein, which is the vein in the crook of your elbow. It's the vein that we all associate with blood draws, and the blood draw must be done fasting, which means no food or drink other than water, of course, for 12 hours prior to the blood draw. Here's a little picture of our sensor. It's pretty neat. It has the capability to detect much, much smaller concentrations of this blood marker than what's currently available. For our blood lipids, as I already mentioned, we'll get high density lipoprotein, which is good cholesterol. We'll get low density lipoprotein, which is one of the bad cholesterols. We'll get very low density lipoprotein, another bad cholesterol. And we'll also get triglycerides, or the amount of fat in your blood. All right, so following the blood draw, we'll do the DEXA scan, which will be the body composition scan, and it also measures bone density. So, as already mentioned, the DEXA will be used to measure body composition, that percent body fat. It is a low dose X-ray exposure. However, 1,600 DEXA scans are equal to about 1 year of normal radiation exposure. So it's a very safe scan. Nonetheless, all women must complete a pregnancy test prior to having the scan done. As far as the demand on you, the participant, it's very easy. All you have to do is just lay motionless. Scan takes about 10 minutes to complete. All right, there's also going to be a series of logs that we're going to ask everyone to complete as well. There's an activity tracker and physical activity logs. These are 7-day periods where we'll be wearing the physical activity tracker and completing the logs 3 times throughout the project, at week 0, so at baseline, at week 6, so at midpoint, and then at week 13 towards the end. So there'll be 3 periods where you're tracking your physical activity and logging it as well. There'll also be dietary logs and meeting with the dietitian. These will be 3-day periods where you're logging your beverage intake and your food intake. You'll be doing this at week 0, week 2, week 4, week 6, week 9, week 11, and week 13. So that's 7 different times where you'll be logging your food and beverage intake and then also meeting with the dietitian. There'll also be a training or a heart rate log. This will help us measure your intensity during aerobic exercise, and you'll only do this on training days. This is a little image of our physical activity tracker. So it's pretty cool. It's like a souped up Fitbit or an Apple Watch. It'll measure your physical activity. It'll be worn on the wrist for all 7 days, except for when showering or swimming, because the unit, although water resistant, is not waterproof. And then, of course, guys, make sure you return it at the end of the study to be compensated. So in addition to the physical activity tracker, we'll have you complete a physical activity log. So this is going to be completed during the same 7 days as the watch, and you're going to record what you're doing every 15 minutes for the entire day. Now that sounds probably worse than it actually is, because if you're sitting at work for, let's say, 2 hours, you don't actually need to record every 15 minutes, but when you get up, just work, sitting, 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 sitting. Same thing with sleeping. So the log is actually fairly easy. The important thing with this physical activity log is that our physical activity tracker gives us data, but it doesn't give us context. So it tells us you're being physically active, but it doesn't tell us what activity you're doing. So we don't know if you're going on a run or, let's say, going hang gliding. In addition to this, there'll be the dietary log. So you record all of your food and beverage intake for 3 days, 2 typical days and an atypical day. So usually 2 weekdays and a weekend day. Now there is a much more extensive training for completing this log that's in another video, but the important things are being as specific as possible and making sure to carry the record with you so you can record everything that enters your mouth throughout the day. Lastly, there's a training or heart rate log. So wear the monitor during all training sessions, and then you'll be recording your activity, the equipment used, the intensity, which will be your heart rate, the duration, and the estimated number of calories burned. It's a little image of our log here to the right. And then we'll also be progressing your aerobic exercise so that way you're improving over time. So you'll start at 55% of your heart rate reserve, and every 2 weeks will increase by about 5%. Now, this is another view, of course, of the timeline of this study, and hopefully you can understand how the pieces fit together a little bit more. It's fairly involved, but I want to make sure that everyone knows how many benefits you can get out of this. Not only are you getting all these meetings with the dietitian, you're getting 3 bone mineral density scans, 3 body composition periods, and you're getting a great opportunity to exercise, lose weight, and help science. Of course, there's other reasons to participate, namely being compensated. So you get paid $75 for both of the first 2 training sessions, so $75 each, and then $100 for completing the study. Everyone does need to fill out a W-9, but if you do not make over $600 from, well, clinical trials, really, it will not be reported on your taxes, but it will be reported on the university. So it's for us. If you're interested in participating in this study, please complete the health history questionnaire, the physical activity readiness questionnaire, and send them to, using either email or mail, Sherry Stastny. So the email is sherry.stastny@ndsu.edu, and the mail is Sherry Stastny, NDSU Department 2620, P.O. Box 6050, Fargo, North Dakota 58108. And here is our references list. I wanted to thank you guys again for your time and for paying attention to me. All right, I hope to hear from you soon. Bye-bye.